Good afternoon. In this video, we're going to go over this week's watch list. Before I start the watch list, if you're not in the room, you can find the link in the description of the video and in the bio sections of social media. So with that said, I'm going to start with the bullish side first. It's a new year, so new full week. So we're going to be getting kind of spoiled the last 2 weeks with short weeks. So this is our full week, and hopefully the market will be volatile. And I think that I read somewhere, saw on the calendar, the economic calendar, that we have FOMC minutes on Wednesday. Yeah, we do. So let's see if there's anything else on the calendar. There's OPEC on Monday. So anyways, start with the bullish side first. I have ZM. Now ZM, you can see in the hourly in the far left, you get like a descending wedge, or usually what happens is they end up breaking out, end up popping. Now on the daily, it did break below the 350, which we were playing, but it didn't quite fill the gap yet. So I would imagine it's probably going to close the gap before turning around, but I mean, it could turn around before it even fills the gap. So I mean, it's nothing's ever a sure thing. Just because a gap needs to get filled doesn't mean it'll get filled. So it's possible it could reverse and just take off. Now ideally it would be a buy at 350, but it's already down at 337. So I mean, if it can get above this 345 area right here, and then I'd start looking at it. But ideally over 350 is a big number, and then 355, 360 is going to be a big area right in here. Then you're going to have 370. Then you're going to have resistance right in here, right in the you say the 380 range. Now remember, support resistance is not an exact number. It's an area, not a number. So yeah, I'll be watching ZM for a possible reverse, but if it takes off tomorrow, options are going to be really high, and it's going to be probably too expensive to play. So we'll just have to see what happens on that. Now QCOM, I was playing on Friday, anticipating a breakout on the hourly, and you know, it did break out a little bit over 151, and just I had calls at 152.50, and they just, because it was expiration day, it didn't really amount to anything. But as far as on the daily, it's got a gap to fill right into the 154 area, and if it does fill, I could probably push to 160. So I mean, you got an ascending wedge forming right here on QCOM's hourly, so you know, it could pop. So definitely the MACD is starting to curl, and histogram is starting to turn green. So no, it's getting close. So QCOM could make a nice little pop if the market conditions are there. So TTD, wait a minute, maybe I think I wrote down the ticker wrong. Yeah, it's TTD. Why did I write? For some reason I wrote the wrong ticker down on my thing. Now trade desk, it got clobbered the last few days. So on the weekly, it's still got room to go down to the 720-ish, 750, even 700 area. I mean, it can keep going down at 700, but there is an earnings gap right here. But usually what ends up happening is that if it keeps continuing to drop, it will test the gap support before actually going. So if it keeps going down, it could probably bounce in the 720 area. But it could be a watch over, over 810 for a push to, 830, then 840, say 845 area, then 860. But we'll have to see if how that plays out. But I mean, like I said, it's still some more downside potentially right here if it doesn't end up reversing. So it's just extreme conditions right here. As you can see, the RSI is get a bullish divergence because it's making lower lows and their RSI is rising. So same with the histogram. So that's what makes me believe that we could see a reversal on TTD. So Splunk SPLK is another one. I mean, it had a big earnings gap down. It broke through the gap resistance and went and tested this area resistance in the 186 area and rejected. So it did pull back some, but it did actually kind of pull back to right where it broke out, retesting the former breakout area. So we could see a reversal on this to come up and retest this 185. So I would definitely watch Splunk over 172 and push to the 177 area to 180, then 185. Now if it does manage to break over this 185 area, it's probably going to end up filling the rest of the gap going to 200. So have to watch that. Now Facebook is another one. You know, it's just sitting in this little area. It's just chopping in this little 280 to 270 area. It's just bouncing around, and as you can see on the hourly, you get like an inverted head and shoulders. You get the left shoulder, you get the head, and you get the right shoulder. So if it does manage to get over 280, it's probably going to end up taking off. But I would watch it over 275 or push to 280. Now if 280 does break, the inverted head and shoulders could play out, and if it does, it's probably going to shoot to 285, 290. So Facebook is definitely one to watch. Now BABA, that's another one. I know that there was news that came out about the CEO Jack Ma, whatever his name is like missing or something, hasn't been seen in public for a little while. So I mean, who knows? I mean, if that does anything, it'll be a short-term drawback. I mean, so many CEOs end up leaving the company and just end up still doing well. I mean, look at Google and Microsoft. So just because Bill Gates and I don't remember the guy from Google, Sergio, something like that, and they left and they still thrived. It just was a short-term panic, but who knows if unless China ends up executing the BABA CEO. I mean, who knows? China's just crazy. They'll just, who knows what they're capable of doing. So regardless of that, but BABA's got this, like, I don't know, it's in the middle of two gaps. I mean, they gapped down, then it gapped up, and it's kind of like a little island. So it's like an island gap, if you want to call it that. And so I would watch it over 235 or push to 240, and you get this little area in 244. But if it does manage to get over this, it's probably going to push to 250 and to close the gap right around 256 to 260. So it's just a weird little setup here. You get a big gap down, then it gaps up, and it's just staying in this little area. As you can see on the daily, it's like a little island. You know, you got the mainland here and mainland here. It's like China and Taiwan, and you got BABA right here. So I know that's a bad analogy, but it's all by itself. It's going to either have to break up or break down to fill one of these gaps. But I would imagine, if anything, it's probably going to be a short-term drop than a pop. So I think BABA has earnings coming up soon, and they'll probably do really well on earnings. Or there'll be some kind of earnings run up on BABA, regardless of what's happening with the CEO. We'll have to see what happens. Wayfair is another one. It's just, Wayfair is just really extremely oversold on the hourly. I mean, the RSI is flattening to slightly going up, and it's making lower lows. So there is a bullish divergence going on with Wayfair. So if it does manage to get over, like, say, I would say 230, does get over 230, it's probably going to push to 235. 240 would be a big area. This whole 240 area is where it's been chopping in here. So that'll be tough resistance to get through. Then you get the 250 area if it does manage to get over that. And on the daily, the last time I got into this 223 area, 222 area, it ended up bouncing. So we'll have to see if that actually does happen or not. So I mean, it is oversold on stochastics on the daily, so it could reverse because it's at the lower part of the Keltner channel. We'll have to see if that actually does play out. EA is another one. Now EA, I mean, you get like an ascending wedge right here on the hourly, and on the weekly, which is right here, you get a huge cup and handle. I mean, you get a huge cup and a little, well, this handle doesn't look like much, but it's actually pretty big. This is the actual handle, and if you look at it from the daily perspective, and you can also say this is a cup, and this is a little bit of a handle right here too. So it gets over this even over the highs of Friday, which is 143.46. Let's just 143.86. Let's just round up and say 144. Gets over 144, 145. It's going to probably push to this high right here, which is 147.36. Then, if that ends up breaking, it's probably going to retest the 150, 151 area. Now, if it gets above that, it's probably going to shoot to 160. So. EA is another one to actually watch out for. Now on the bearish side, I have a few on here. BA is one of them. I mean, I don't know. BA is just, it's been a really tough one to kind of predict. I mean, it gets good news, it drops, and it gets bad news, it pops. I mean, this stock is so bipolar, it's just stupid. So it is pushing down. I mean, I'm looking for it on a short. As a short, and if it does manage and getting below the, let's say this 212 area, then you get down to the 210, then you get 200. 200 would be a big number. If it does manage to break that, it's probably going to shoot down and fill this gap to 190. And I still keep looking at this big gap right here. So who knows if BA will actually fill that or not. But I would definitely look at it from the short side. I mean, if it gets news and it gets any momentum going in that positive direction or bullish direction, you know, I'll switch sides. I mean, I'm not going to be narrow-minded. I'm going to play both directions if it does end up doing something. Because I like playing BA is bipolar, and stupid as it is, I do like playing it. Shack, I mean, I don't know. To me, on the weekly, it just looks like it's kind of topping out. I mean, you get this little rounded top, just like it did over here in the 105 area, and it's in the 90s. So I'd actually be looking for it for a short, for probably to come back down and retest this 68, 67 area. So I would watch it underneath, I'd say 83. I mean, you can go 84, but, 83, if it gets under 83, it's probably going to start dropping, and you get a gap right here to fill. At 72, then you get a lot of support right here, weekly support in the 65, 66 area. So, and if it manages to break that, it's probably go back down to 50. I mean, if the Shack gets below 50, I'm gonna buy shares and just hang on to it because this thing will recover. Roku. Now Roku is just keeps going and going and going, and finally it started to pull back this past week a little bit. So let's see if it can actually keep pulling back or if it's going to actually reverse. But I'd be watching it on any 330 for a push to 323, 320, and it gets below that. You get the 30. Well, you get this area right here. Well, I mean 320 area. Then if that does break, you also get this 310 area, 308, then you get 300. So I don't know how far this will go, but on the weekly, this thing is so far stretched. I mean, it just needs to come back a little bit. But if it does manage to come back and at least retest something, it should come back and retest the middle Keltner channel, which is around 252 on the weekly. But that's a pretty significant drop. I mean, well, actually not really. I mean, 252 is right here on the daily, so that looks like a big drop. I mean, usually when you have big stretched exaggerated moves like this on the weekly, it makes a big slam back down and vice versa. So I mean, it has yet to come back down and retest these levels. So we'll have to see if this is the week it will do it. Apple is another one. I know Apple keeps having news and stuff like that, but the weekly chart on Apple just looks toppy. I mean, you get a divergence going on, a bearish divergence, a double top, and RSI is making lower lows, lower highs. So it's got like an inverted hammer on the weekly, so that's kind of bearish, and we'll have to see if it actually does play out as bearish. So I would watch it underneath 131 for a push to get a little gap right here to fill at 128. And it looks like that probably filled that gap. Then you got 125, and you get this big area right here of the 120 right here. So 120 and 119. and see if it comes back down to retest that this week. So that will be one to watch too. And GS is another one. The banks. Now, I know the GS, I mean, you get like a rising wedge right here. So usually when you have these rising wedges and they break, they're usually down to the downside. And you look at the weekly on Goldman Sachs. So once it gets into this 265 area, it ends up like reversing. So it struggles in this area on the weekly back here, and looks like April, May of 2018. And it did get up here a little bit, then it got slammed down, but this was because of COVID. So, I mean, COVID was actually right here. This market was starting to turn right here, but I'd be watching Goldman Sachs under this right here. Actually, yeah, it'd be ideal to wait for it under 259 for a push down to 250. You get a gap right here to fill at 245. Then you get this area right here, right in the 240-ish area. So we'll have to see if it does anything and pulls back on the bank. So Home Depot is on the bearish side. I mean, I was trying to play it right here, and we did pretty good on that after our 2-week hold. But it's kind of downtrending. It's making lower highs, but yeah, I mean, it made a higher low right here, so it is kind of like wedging right in here. But there's this big support right in this 260 262 area, and if it does manage to get below that and break, it's probably going to end up dropping pretty good. So I would watch it on any 264 for a push down to 262, 260. Now, if it does manage to get to 260, it could try to pop, it could try to bounce, and if it doesn't, I mean, it's got room on the weekly to get down to the 250, 255 area, 250, even down to 240. We'll have to see what Home Depot does on that. And Disney is another one I'm looking at. Disney, pretty much the same thing. I mean, you just keeps getting these gap ups, and it just keeps going and going, and then we'll have to see if it actually does pull back. And it's the same thing as like Roku. It's gotten so far stretched from the RCT trend line, which is pointing up, but I mean, it's way up here, and should come back and retest this 155 area. But I mean, it doesn't have to do anything, but we're just gonna watch it to see if it does pull back this week. It does have a pretty extreme move. I mean, the RSI on the weekly is practically 80, and anytime it gets below the above the well, actually right here it got above 73, and it just dropped back a little bit, but then it ended up like rebounding. So it's just the RSI on the weekly is so overstretched, and the daily, the RSI is diverging, so you're making a higher high, and the RSI is making a lower high, so it's diverging on the daily. So we'll have to see if it actually does pull back, and watch it underneath 180 for a gap fill in the 177 to 175 for another gap fill in the 174, and then you get this whole area in the 171 area that's pretty big. Its whole 170 area right in here between 171 and 170 is a pretty big area for Disney. Now, if it does manage to get down to this area, it's probably going to end up holding and try to bounce a little bit. And what ends up usually happening is that if that does play out that way, they'll come back. If it does actually pull back, it could find support in the 169, 170 area, and it could bounce a little bit, forming a head and shoulders before actually filling this gap. So definitely be watching that over the next couple weeks to see if that actually does play out that way or not. So that's gonna do it for the watch list. I hope this video has helped. If you're not subscribed, please do. Please like the video, and thank you for watching.